can't wait to make this a podcast later. That's going to be a little bit of editing involved, but again, that's how I roll. Welcome everybody to the show. As always, we've got Hometown Ghost Stories joining us. They are, of course, a YouTube channel and a podcast. And the three gentlemen are Jesse Wilkins, Rob Coakley, and Dave Wilkins. They're going to be here with us, and we're going to dig into their stories, their experiences, what drove them to create Hometown Ghost Stories, and also talk about some of their investigations. These guys are actually getting out there, and they're doing the work. And if you haven't checked out their channel, please do. I was recently a guest on their show, and I'm here to tell you, these guys are doing it right. In fact, they're doing it so right, I feel like I need to learn from them. Hey everybody, and welcome to the Paranormal Portal Podcast. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. Thank you all for joining us, and a special thank you goes out to all of you who continue to support the podcast and continue to spread the word. Always remember, if any of you out there have experiences of your own that you'd like to share, feel free to email me at paranormalportalradio@gmail.com. Again, paranormalportalradio@gmail.com, and you too could be a guest on the show. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. How are you guys doing tonight?
We're doing great, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm glad we got everybody connected. So glad you guys are here. Thank you guys for joining us. As always, I don't do a lot of guests on the live show, but I had such a great time with you guys on your show. I'm like, yeah, you guys have got to come on. This will be awesome. And, of course, when I was on your show, we talked about the Queen Mary, the haunted, vessel over in, California. And, I came to know a lot about you guys as far as you're getting out there. You're doing the research. You're doing these epic shows, amazingly well put together. You're doing a podcast. So you have a YouTube channel, a podcast. You're getting out there and investigating. You guys are really rolling deep on this. That's amazing.
We're doing everything. Yeah. And, it feels like we're doing everything, but we love it. It's a lot of fun. We've met a lot of great people, including yourself, and you don't have much to learn from us at all. You have a black hat on, and that's pretty much all you need in order to do these ghost shows.
That's where I'm part of the club then, right? I'm grandfathered in. Good.
Exactly.
So if you don't mind me asking, and I don't, whoever wants to go first, or if you all have a joint story, or if you have individual stories, feel free, whomever, to go first. But what led you to this place to decide we got to do this? Was there events that you guys experienced, a young age, all your life? What was the genesis of all this?
Do you guys want me to go first on this one?
Well, it does start with Rob. I mean, we were all involved in the story as well, but it does start all back on that house on North Street.
Yeah. So I grew up in Bridgewater, Massachusetts, which a lot of your listeners will probably know the Bridgewater Triangle, right? So yeah. I am in the heart of the Bridgewater Triangle, and Dave and Jesse are from around here as well. And my grandparents purchased a house in 1968 in Bridgewater. Oh. And we found out later about some of the history of that house, but my first paranormal experience wasn't even my own paranormal experience. It was my little brother's experience. So when I was about 8 years old, my little brother was 2, and middle of the day, he was supposed to be upstairs taking a nap. I'm downstairs with my mother doing whatever. We're the only 3 in the house, and we hear him start screaming from upstairs.
Oof.
We're not too alarmed because this is a kid that got into everything. So we assumed he just fell or hurt himself somehow. So we run upstairs to assist him to see what he's doing, to make sure he's okay. And he's literally in the back of his back is up against the corner of one of the hallway corners. And he's as pale as a ghost. He's white. And he's just pointing, going, "The man, mummy, the man, mummy, the man," over and over and over again. And it was terrifying. And then I started talking to my grandmother about the house, and she had talked about how she heard voices and stuff like that in the house, and some other stories came out. And a few years later, when the internet became such a, the internet was around then, but when it became more accessible and we started having it more and more in the house, I started looking into stories from Bridgewater, and I found out that house used to be a farm. And weirdly, it was called the Oakley Farm. And my last name is Coakley, but there's no relation to that. Okay. Later I can bring out, I found a sign. I'll tell you about that in a bit. But, so the farmer of that original house, his cow used to get out all the time, and he would go chase down his cow and bring it back to the house. And one night his cow gets out, he goes to get the cow, and he never comes back.
Oh, geez.
And 2 days later, the Bridgewater Enterprise is there. They're interviewing, I think it was his nephew. And while they're interviewing him out of the woods, because there used to be a bunch of woods in the back, the dog came out, and the nephew was like, there's the dog. And then right behind the dog was the cow. And they were like, oh, there's the cow. My uncle must be right behind him. But the uncle never came out, and they never found the uncle's body at all. So we're pretty sure that would be the person haunting the house, although I can't confirm that by any means, obviously. So we think that his spirit is haunting the house. And basically with Jesse and Dave, what ended up happening was when my grandfather started to get sick a number of years ago, probably 10, 11 years ago at this point, this house is so old that the only heating system for it at the time was a wooden stove. Oh. And we're in Massachusetts. So, during the winter, you have to keep that wood stove going. So when he got sick, him and my grandmother had to move in with my aunt. And while they were there, somebody had to be in the house. And unfortunately, being young and single, I got stuck with the duty of living in that house for 2 years. And as soon as I moved in, within a few days, as I always hated being in that house, stuff started happening, and I started telling Dave and Jesse, and they would come over. And we all collectively had some crazy experiences together.
Wow. So, Jesse, what was your experiences?
So we spent a few nights at Rob. I mean, more than a few nights at Rob's house. I mean, we were real good friends at the time. But one night
anymore. We hate each other now.
Yeah, now it's a mixed friendship and work. It doesn't pan out. Anyways, I remember one night in particular is the craziest of nights because we were going over there all the time, and it was more of like a party atmosphere. We'd bring over a lot of people, and we're like, all right, let's go rile up the ghosts or whatever. We'd go up into the attic, which seemed to be the most active spot, shut off all the lights, and look around, and we would just experience a ton of paranormal activity. We did EVP sessions, we did spirit box sessions, we did the old flashlight trick where you kind of unscrew a flashlight just enough where electricity can jump and then see if it responds to your questions by turning on and off. Not only did it turn on and off all the time in response to your questions, but on one night in particular, while we were filming, actually, the whole flashlight exploded, like just batteries went flying across the room and everything, where everyone freaked out. It was absolutely terrifying. Again, it's the flashlight trick. You never really know if this is just electricity being electricity or if it could be something paranormal. But the fact that it was replying to questions and turning on and off on command, it entertained everyone in the room, to say the least. But there was one night in particular, I remember it was a blizzard, and me and the now wife, then girlfriend at the time, we're at home and we're like, okay, there's going to be a blizzard. It was a huge one a few years back. I don't know if it would have affected you, but in Massachusetts it was massive, most snow I've ever seen. But we knew it was coming. So we're like, okay, do we want to lose electricity at home, or should we just go to Rob's and lose electricity there since he has a wood stove in the house? We're like, all right, let's go to Rob's. He has a stove, at least we'll keep warm. It'll be fun. We'll just get snowed in together, then shovel our way out eventually. So we go there, and during the night, this is when we got most activity. And it started with bangs upstairs and knocks, and we're all like, oh boy. And as the night went on, it just got more and more active. And then it was one point we're all laying down, getting ready to go to bed, and we hear the distinct sound of footsteps. And it wasn't just a couple footsteps. It was footsteps that we could hear go down the hallway and then take a right into one of the bedrooms. Just boom, 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 boom. And it was just like the most clear sound ever that somebody is walking right above us. And absolutely every single one of us heard it. We all turned to each other. We're like, oh boy. Yeah, we all heard that. And that was the point where, for me, it went from, this is fun, let's see if we get a flashlight to turn on, to, oh my God, there's actually a ghost in this house. And we all heard it. Yeah. And then we also had our dog at the time, Max. He would go in the house and he would just sit at the bottom of the stairs, and he refused to go upstairs. And as we did so many investigations here, we learned that it was the second floor that was really, really creepy, and it was the attic that we got the most paranormal activity. But nothing made me feel more unsafe than the second floor of that house. And the dog refused to go upstairs. Wow. He would just stand there at the bottom of the stairs and bark up the stairs. We're like, what are you barking at? What are you barking at? And we all knew, I mean, that he sees something that we can't see.
And that wasn't the only dog that did that there. Almost every dog that ever went to the house did the same thing at that staircase.
Yikes. What about you, Dave? What was your experiences with all this? Oh, you're muted, buddy.
We'll let Dave figure that out. And as soon as he
there
does,
you go. Okay. Yeah, sorry.
Well, while he's figuring that out, I can tell the other story the scariest story for me. Mm-hmm. Anyways. So one night, Jesse, he used to DJ. He still does occasionally, but I would go out to some of his events with him. And one night I went out to hang out with him while he was working. And I came home, hadn't drank anything at all that night, was completely sober. It's like 1 a.m. or something like that. And I was so scared of the second floor of this house that there was a living room that had like a divider in the middle so that you could split it into 2 living rooms, kind of, or like a dining room or something like that. Mm-hmm. I turned one of those into my bedroom because I did not want to stay on the second floor. Yeah. So I came in, I went to the bathroom to get ready, and I hear a conversation, which is fine because I leave my TV on to this day. I leave my bedroom TV on. It's just something I've always done. So while I'm brushing my teeth and getting ready for bed, I hear this conversation. It doesn't mean anything to me. I'm not really listening to context. I leave the bathroom, I go into the bedroom, and I look, and the TV is off. And as soon as I notice the TV's off, the voices stop. And I stand there for about 2 seconds, and then from the top of the stairs, which was right behind me from the doorway of the bedroom, I hear 3 or 4 words yelled down. And I don't know what they said because I was just in such utter shock. And like, I still get goosebumps telling this story because this is like the scariest thing that's ever happened to me. And we've had some stuff happen since we started the show that I just stood there like stunned and I didn't know what to do.
Right.
It's like 1 a.m, 2 a.m. It's like, do you go to a hotel? Like, do you leave the house? And I ended up just laying in bed and just keeping my eyes open until about 5 a.m. And then just like, all right, well, maybe I'll go take a drive now.
Oh, man. Yeah, that activity sounds really, really intense. Was it ever like evil or dark, or was it just a powerful presence?
I don't want to say anything was evil. There was nothing like bad ever happened. You know what I mean? Sure. But I think it was intelligent because it seemed like it would really get angry with us if we went looking for the spirit. It felt like it would get angry but not retaliate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Sure.
So I don't think it was anything demonic or anything to that nature.
Yeah.
But it was a scary. It would scare the hell out of me. And I'll wrap this story up with, we did our first episode on this house, and it started making the rounds around the Bridgewater pages. You know, you got your little local groups and everything.
Sure.
And about 3 or 4 months after we aired this episode, I got a message, and the message was, hey, is this the address of the house that you're talking about in Bridgewater? And I said, yes, but I don't tell anybody because we don't own the house anymore.
Sure.
And the person responded with, well, I'm the new owner. And then they started telling me everything that's happened to them. And some of it was overlapping stuff from the show. They had the voice situation happen. But some of the stuff was stuff that I didn't say on the show because I tried to reason with myself that it wasn't paranormal. It was just coincidence. So one of the ones was basically the attic door. Half the time you go upstairs, even though it had a double deadbolt, would be open. And I assumed it was an old house settling or whatever, and the door would swing open. The house had been fully renovated since then. The attic door is in a different spot. And she says about 25 to like 35% of the time she goes upstairs, that attic door is wide open still. It's in a different spot of the attic, of the second floor. So, and it's got a lock and everything. So it's a crazy experience. And that house, I still drive by that house occasionally, and it still scares the hell out of me.
Yeah, that's kind of stuff you'll never forget, I'm sure. And it has a presence to it. Dave, did you get your mic working?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yes. You are live, sir.
Awesome.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Great to be here. That Bridgewater story is great. And my favorite part of it is the fact that the people heard the episode and reached back out, because it validates everything. And that's what you want when because I feel like you're never really 100% sure when it involves the paranormal. I'm sure there are some people who are 100% sure about the things that they witness, but I always feel like for me, I want to have that validation that it's what I saw was real and I'm not just losing my mind. So for me, it was kind of cool to see all of those things that we had experienced in that house be validated.
Yeah, no doubt.
Reaching back out.
Yeah, that's really cool. And then the fact that they could corroborate some of the activity as well. Like, yeah, that's still happening. And guess what? Yeah, that's really intense. So you guys had these experiences, and at what point did you go, let's do a show? Was it the house? Was it was that the whole, let's do a show about this house, and then it just blossomed, or how did this work?
Not really. It was years in between these events and when we started the show. But after we started investigating the Bridgewater house, we were like, this is exciting. Let's investigate more things. Where else can we go? So I think the next thing we went to go see was the Houghton Mansion out in the Berkshires in Massachusetts, way western Mass. It was North Adams, Massachusetts, which is like, if you're looking at a map of Massachusetts, it's as far northwest as you can get before you're in New York State. And it was a really interesting area. It's in the mountain range, and this area is in it's almost like a bowl, surrounded by mountains. Really cool atmosphere. And in the middle of this bowl is this big haunted mansion called the Houghton Mansion. And this is a place that Zach Baggins has been to, and several other paranormal investigators. So we're like, let's go check out this one. It's right in our state. We didn't really realize how far away it was until we were like, oh, we're going from one side of the state to the complete opposite side of the state.
Sure.
But once we got there, we're looking for this mansion, first of all, and we're driving through this residential neighborhood, and it's just house. We're like, this can't be it. This can't be right. There's no way there's a haunted mansion just in this little neighborhood. And sure enough, in the middle of this tiny little neighborhood is this gigantic mansion that it used to be an old mansion. They turned it into a Masonic lodge, and it was this haunted location. So we were just amateurs, and we were like, let's get in and let's see if we can find some stuff. And we found some pretty interesting stuff there, much to my surprise. I was a little bit skeptical back then, but I was pretty shocked right off the bat with the things that we saw.
Wow. So you were skeptical, even though you'd already experienced so many things in your younger years, you were skeptical even moving forward from there?
Yeah, I was always more of a skeptic than these guys were, personally.
Sure.
And it was kind of funny to take a side story here. I was talking about how much of a skeptic I was, and my mother one day goes to me, she goes, "You're a skeptic?" She's like, "Do you know you have a ghost story?" I'm like, "What do you mean I have a ghost story? I would know if I had a ghost story. I don't have a ghost story." And she goes, "Well, I'll tell you. You were about 2 years old. We lived in this house in Plymouth, and we had just moved in. Jesse wasn't born yet, and I was 2, and I had this little imaginary friend when we moved into the house. And I had named this imaginary friend Bernie. And my mother thought that was kind of an odd name for a 2-year-old to come up with, Bernie. She's like, all right, whatever. He has an imaginary friend. No big deal. One day, she's having tea with the neighbor. And the neighbor was talking about the woman who lived in the house previously. Nice lady. in her 30s, died young of cancer, and her name was Bernadette. And everyone called her Bernie. And my mother, she was drinking tea, and she almost spit her tea all over the woman and said, her name is what? She goes, yeah. She's like, my son has an imaginary friend named Bernie. So that was kind of, for me, that was like, oh, wow. That's like a legitimate haunting, I think. I don't know. Who knows what a 2-year-old can come up with, but I just think it was so random to come up with that particular name. Yeah. So
I think those stories are fascinating too. When the imaginary friends that are probably more than just imaginary, and having, the ability to tell these children things, and the kids will start singing songs that there's no way they ever heard, or start bringing up stories that there's nowhere they were exposed to. I think that's very powerful. Kids definitely see more than we do, but that's really powerful. But it's also a little creepy.
It is creepy, and it is powerful. For me, when you hear a kid say that they see a ghost, like Rob's story that he told about his younger brother, a kid, some people might dismiss a kid's story and say it's a kid, kids get big imaginations, but a kid also isn't afraid to say what they're seeing. And a lot of times when they're that young, they don't really have a reason to make something like that up. Mm-hmm. And they might just be saying what they see without fear of people saying they're crazy. Right. Like an adult might have reservations to say they saw a ghost for fear of being ostracized for whatever reason. But a kid doesn't. Yeah. So you can look at it from the other side and say, well, what a kid is seeing might be more legitimate because they don't have any reason to say anything otherwise.
Right. Yeah, good point. So Rob, I know you're a believer because you grew up around this stuff and it was just part of your existence, but Jesse, when did you get on board with this, or were you always open to it, or did you start out skeptical as well?
I was more like open-minded, but skeptical. And it was more like I needed to see something in front of my face for me to actually believe it. But I always wanted to. I was like, the idea of ghosts was always so fascinating to me. The idea of demons was always terrifying to me. Yeah. And I always, Halloween was just, as I grew older and older, it just was like, I was all out. Halloween's my absolute favorite. Let's do all the haunted houses. Let's do this. And then it evolved from, let's stop going to haunts and let's go to actual haunted houses and go see this creepy place. Let's go visit that abandoned place. And it just evolved into an absolute interest in this stuff. So I went into it with an open mind, but deep down I was like, I couldn't fully call myself a believer in the paranormal until I saw something in front of my face. And in the strangest of places, I did end up seeing something. Oh. Me and Rob were living together in a condo with my buddy Nick, so we were all just roommates. And my room was in the basement. And one night, randomly, I wake up. Actually, it's like the morning, so early hours in the morning. I wake up, and I turn, and there's a shadow of, like a giant shadow figure of a woman standing right next to me, like right next to the bed. And I look over, and I'm just like, oh, swear words. And I lost my mind, and then I turn around, I look back, and she's gone. It was so clear and so like in my face. It wasn't like, oh, I think I see a shadow. It was right there standing over me like it was about to slap me or something.
Oh, Jesus.
I had thought maybe my girlfriend or fiance at the time or whatever she was at the time, I thought maybe she had come in unannounced and was just standing there waiting for me to wake up or something psychotic like that. I was 1,000% sure there was a woman standing there. And that was like the first thing that I've ever seen that shook me to my core. And then strangely enough, I just go about my day, whatever. I don't really tell anybody. And then later that day, me and Rob hop in the car and we're heading somewhere, probably a casino. And I'm like, dude, this crazy thing happened to me. And Rob's like, dude, this crazy thing happened to me. I'm like, what happened to you? He's like, last night I woke. Rob, I'll let you tell it because I don't want to get the details wrong.
So nothing had ever happened in this condo before this and after this is another thing we need to preface here. I was in bed watching TV, and I felt something sit.
Not the same bed, just to make that clear. It's different rooms.
No, different rooms.
Well, you were close friends, but
it wasn't the weekend. This was during the week. During the weekend,
yeah,
sure.
All bets are off on the weekend. So I'm laying in bed, and I feel something sit on the side of the bed, and then push me over and lay down. And I remember staring at the wall for like 5 minutes, terrified. And then I'm like, what are you doing? There's nothing here. Turn over. There's not going to be anything there. And there was nothing there. And then I heard or felt nothing else the rest of the night, but it was distinct. You know when someone sits on a bed. It's different than like just touching the bed. It's different than putting your hand on the bed. There was like that sag feeling almost that comes on, and it was terrifying. And just to Jesse's point, we got in the car that day, and we both just kind of sat there while we were driving for 5 minutes and said nothing to each other. And then like at the same time said it. It was just, I'll never forget that car ride because it was just so odd. It was so, the energy was so different that day and because we're friends, we bust each other's balls all the time. As soon as we get in the car, he'll probably make fun of me or I'll make fun of him. But that day we just drove for 5 minutes and then told this story. It was crazy.
I've been trying to rack my brain because it wasn't like we went somewhere haunted. There's absolutely no reason that this random condo in Marshfield would be haunted. It's just the most unassuming place. I don't think it's haunted. Nothing else paranormal, to my knowledge, has ever happened there. Mm-hmm. It was just that one night the both of us seem to have gotten visited by something, and I don't really have an explanation for it.
It's probably just Dave.
Must be.
So Rob, what does it feel like to be the little spoon in that deal?
So as we've done this show more and more, although Dave has had some experiences, Jesse has had some experiences. Mm-hmm. When we go to these places, I think we've learned that I'm relatively sensitive to this stuff, more so than I ever thought. So going to these places, we went and we did an investigation at the Oliver House in Middleborough, Massachusetts. And I remember walking into that house, and it's creepy, but they don't dress it up to be creepy. It is dressed up to be like it was in the 1700s. It's not one of those haunted places where they're putting dolls and stuff everywhere. For the most part, this place, they're trying to show you how the Olivers basically lived in the late 1700s. So I remember going in the house, and we're doing just some B-roll footage during the day. We're just like filming some of the inside of the house. We just want to just to show, because as you were on, we do a pre-produced section on our show to do a narration and show the place when we do a investigation. And I'm walking around, and I think everybody's upstairs. Well, it turns out everybody had went outside, and I'm in here just like an idiot, just recording by myself, just walking around this haunted place. And I walked upstairs, and I remember looking at this one room, and I felt real uneasy looking at it. And then I stepped in real quick, and I felt even more uneasy. And later we had a guide that came and like explained all the rooms to us. And I was like, this room feels off. And she goes, oh, that room is off, and here's why. And I was like, oh, okay. And if you ever go investigating with your friends, what I will say is never admit when you see a place that you find scary, because they will stick you in that room by yourself to do the investigation, and it's terrifying. But we got a lot of good
1,000% of the time.
Yeah.
Never expose your weakness.
Never expose your weakness, exactly. But
yeah, the Oliver House was a good investigation. That was a very historic house. Benjamin Franklin had spent time there, and it had a lot of ties to the Revolutionary War and everything. So it was a real cool place to investigate. We went in there and didn't expect to get much. And we're like, this is probably, whatever. It's something to do. Let's just go do it. We had a friend who was kind of running the operation over there in terms of hosting paranormal investigations. None of us somehow had heard of this house until we were at a paranormal convention on board the USS Salem, which is a old World War II or post-World War II battleship that they had a paranormal convention on. And we ran into her there. We're like, oh, my gosh, Dave knew her anyways. Anyways, we end up there, and we went in there not really thinking we were going to get anything, and we ended up getting a lot. There was some serious intelligent responses via the spirit box, some weird stuff that we really couldn't explain. Rob got scratched. We did get it on camera. He tried to rack his brain, was like, did I scratch myself? I don't remember touching myself, but there was a red mark. We actually put it in the video. So could be something there. I don't think there's anything demonic there, but something scratched Rob, whether it was Rob not knowing that he scratched himself, but I don't think so. Like, we had cameras on him the whole time, and we never saw that happen. So there was something there. There definitely was. And it actually ended up being like one of our top 5 most downloaded podcasts. So for some reason, this house that we, and I'm pretty sure most listeners hadn't heard of, it actually did really well, and people were pretty interested in it.
Yeah, that's fantastic, especially with that kind of history. That's incredible.
Have you heard of the Oliver House, Brett?
Yeah, I've heard of that. I've heard of the Houghton mansion that you're talking about. I hadn't heard of the Battleship, but that's really cool too. I'd love to check out all of them. And I'm kind of envious because those of you on the East Coast, you have access to these, 300-400 year old, possibly more, locations. Whereas I'm over in the north of Idaho and we have buildings, but most of them are like maybe, 100 years old or so. They were, of course, settled much later. But yeah, I think there's so much history. There's so many things that have happened on the East Coast that, just seems to really lend itself to excellent paranormal locations. We got a question in the chat, and this is from one of our listeners, K-Love, and she says, has anyone brought home a hitchhiker from the haunted places?
Not that I know of personally, but I don't think that necessarily means yes or no one way or the other, because these entities have no perception of time. So I could have brought something home at any point and it could still be lingering and just not made itself present yet. But as far as I know, nothing for me personally. No. You guys?
No, nothing. Not to my knowledge at the moment. We'll see as we do more and more investigations.
Yeah.
I don't think so as well, but I wouldn't rule it out. I mean, the house that I'm in now, we're all with the general consensus that we're pretty sure is haunted. At least me and the wife are. Mm-hmm. And it's a relatively old house. It was built in 1899, and things have been happening. And as we visit more and more locations, I wouldn't rule out that the reason that more things are now happening in this house that I'm in is because maybe as I'm exposing myself to darker and darker locations, something it could be building activity, but I just don't know. It might just be a relatively haunted house. The house that I'm in now, it's got some cool stories. For one, we found a hidden staircase in a couple walled off rooms. Ooh. That was a cool find. I don't know if there's anything haunted tied to that, but yeah, we were taking a mirror off the bathroom and all of a sudden there's a whole staircase behind the mirror. And I was like, what in the world? So of course I climb in.
Did Nicolas Cage climb out with the copy of the Constitution or something?
He did, yes. That's where he stored the Declaration of Independence.
That's where they got the idea for the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
My bathroom. But we've had some cool stuff. So that there's been knocks. We're always seeing shadows kind of flit by in the corner of our eyes, mostly in the kitchen area and where I'm at now, which is in my office. The kitchen's right behind me. So the kitchen area seems to be the most active location in this house. There was one night, me and the wife were watching a movie in the living room, which is a couple rooms back, and we hear something hit the floor in the kitchen. We're like, what the hell was that? So we go into the kitchen, and one of the magnets from the fridge had launched itself all the way across the kitchen, and it was sitting towards the complete opposite side. And I'm like, how did a magnet fly off the fridge? No one had gone into the kitchen in a while.
Right.
So like an idiot, I'm standing there in the kitchen, slamming the fridge door, shaking the fridge, trying to get the magnet I couldn't even get the magnet to slide down the fridge, never mind fall off. I drop it on the floor a bunch of times. I couldn't get it to even bounce remotely close to where the thing had landed. Very cool. And I was just fascinated by this. And then there was another incident. I had a bunch of guys over, so me and Rob also kind of mixed in with some fantasy football stuff, but I had a couple guys over that were there to record a podcast in my house. And we're all just sitting there watching the Thursday night football game before we record the podcast. These guys are not into the paranormal. These are sports guys. We're all just sitting there. And this guy Joe's like, bro, what the hell? How did that happen? And we look, and in the middle of the floor, the remote for the TV is just standing up on end. And it wasn't one of those square remotes that you could just balance. This thing was one of the ones with a round bottom. And we're like, dude, I could sit there all afternoon and try to get that thing to stand up on its own. It's not going to do that. How in the world is that there? I have kids, but the kids have been in bed for hours. We had been in there all night watching football. We would have noticed the remote just standing up. It was just weird. Wow. And then the most terrifying incident, this is the last one I'll give you, then I'll give the show back to you. The most terrifying incident I've had in this house, I'm sitting there, I'm home alone, doorbell rings. I'm like, oh, what was that? Okay, someone's at the door. I go to the front door, no one's there. I'm like, oh, weird, they must be at the side door. I go to the side door, no one's there. I'm like, oh, someone's messing with me. I go back to the front door to double check, and then I walk down the driveway to make sure it wasn't just UPS dropping off a package and then leaving. No one's there. I'm like, oh, that was weird. Go back in the house. A few minutes later, doorbell goes off again. I'm like, dude, who is here? Now I'm thinking it's some kid pranking me, hiding in the bushes or something. I go out, nobody's there. And then as I'm going in, I'm like, the thing must just be faulty or something, the wiring. like a psychopath. This thing just goes bing, 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 bing. And dude, my heart just dropped into my stomach. I could hear my heart throbbing in my ears. I'm like, dude, what is happening? And at that point, the wife pulls in, and I'm just standing there like I couldn't move, man. I was freaking out. Absolutely the most horrifying thing ever. Nobody was there. And the doorbell has never done that again. Wow. There's nothing wrong with it. Like the most horrifying thing I've ever experienced, a doorbell.
Jeez. You know what they say about the whole knocking and stuff? If it ever happens, they say don't answer the door because you might just be letting something in.
Yeah, I was trying to ask for permission. I'm sitting there opening every door, walking around the yard with the gun out.
Yeah, exactly.
All the demons are like, wow, this guy's easy.
Yeah, exactly.
God, he's crazier than me.
Yeah, we're moving on. This guy's an idiot. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry.
Oh, you're right.
I don't know you that well. I shouldn't be. But I feel like I've known you guys for years. That's the beauty of getting to know you guys. It's so damn comfortable. So, I just love talking
just
to
click.
Guys. Yeah, right. Exactly. So we get another question in the chat. Has anyone experienced any physical contact or attack?
So the main one was the one we brought up at the Oliver house. Sure. And just to show you like how much we are learning as we go, my whole thing is I don't want to come off as like we're doing stuff just for the show. So
sure.
To go into what happened that night with the scratch, it happened while we were still doing the tour of the house with the tour guide. So we're on the second floor, and we had just left that room I told you about, and my neck started burning. And we had one of the other Wilkins brothers. There's so many of them. Just it's unbelievable. There to help us with filming and stuff like that. And so Dave and Andrew are with the tour guide in the front, and I actually grabbed Jesse by the arm because I didn't want this to be on camera. Mm-hmm. And I grabbed him. I go, hey, I need you to look at my neck, and I need you to tell me if there's anything there because it's burning right now, but I haven't done anything to it, I'm pretty sure. And then he's looking at it. He's like, yeah, it's red. There's a mark there. And we didn't even, like, record it. I'm like, I don't know if we should record this because I don't want this to – because when you watch these shows and you see this, you're like, okay, you just shut the camera off, you did that, and then you turn the camera back on. You're like, that's always been my general impression of it.
Well, the camera was rolling, but it was just walk-through footage, so it wasn't like stand still. It was just kind of me following you around, but you never see your arms go up and scratch you. We did take a picture of it. We included that in the episode, but it wasn't. Yeah, like you said, it wasn't part of the investigation yet, so it wasn't even like we were trying to find anything. We were just trying to take a tour of the house and learn the history. Sure. So it was a weird time for it to happen.
Yeah, so I that's why I pulled them to the side. And obviously we probably should have just recorded it as it happened, but I didn't want to, I don't know. It's like, it was just real weird. It hurt like hell, to be perfectly honest. For the rest of the night, I could feel it the entire night. It was like this burning mark right on the back of the left side of my neck. It hurt like crazy, but it was from that room. It was either from that room that I said or right outside the hallway of it. And I think in terms of like physical interactions, that's the only one I can think of that we've had.
The only other one wasn't during an investigation, but this one was what led my wife to actually bring priests into the house to have the house exorcised. Because at one point it was like 9 a.m. or whatever. It's light out and I'm still in bed, and I got waken up to what I thought was my wife just like grabbing my shoulder kind of aggressively and driving her thumb into like my shoulder blade. I'm like, all right, I'm up. And then there's no one there. And I'm like, whoa. And she was actually walking up the stairs at the time. She goes, what are you doing? She hears me in the bedroom going, whoa. And I'm like,
surfing.
I'm like, I felt you grab my shoulder to wake me up. She's like, I didn't touch you, and we're calling the priests today. And she did actually. And they came by, and it was kind of a funny story when they came by because it was a legit exorcism of the house. Now, they weren't exorcising a demon out of like me or anyone.
Just an infestation.
It was whatever ritual they do to cleanse the house, if you will. Different than just walking around with sage. We're part of a Greek Orthodox church. So every single thing in the Orthodox Church is like a 2-hour process. Yeah. So if you buckle up, if ever you're going to do literally anything with the church, but this was one of those. But he's telling us as he's like getting ready, he's, laying out his different things and finding his verse in the Bible that he's going to read from or whatever. And he's like, all right, so listen, if things start shaking in the house, if the candles light, if things start falling off the shelves, that's perfectly normal. Nothing to worry about. And I'm already doing paranormal investigating. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. I'm like, would you be opposed to me taking a little video if that happens? So I punched my mic, and he was fine with it. But none of that kind of stuff did happen. But still, kind of a cool thing to witness.
Yeah. And Dave, you haven't had any contact kind of experiences?
No, I don't think so. No, not physical contact. No, I've seen plenty of intelligent responses to things, but physically, no, not myself.
Now, Rob, when this happened, was it just, it's kind of a cliche thing, and I'm not really sure that it's as profound as it's made out to be, but was it just one scratch or was it 3?
It was just one.
Okay.
It was like this one mark down my neck, like right down this left side. Pretty sure there wasn't 3. It was just the one scratch.
And the reason I ask is, of course, the cliche, well, it's a mocking of the Trinity, and it's
right.
And I don't know how anybody gets to that assumption. I mean, in my opinion, we don't know that a lot of these things were ever human. So, and how many fingers, if they only have 3, that's how many they can make.
Yeah.
It's a huge assumption to go, well, they're mocking, the Trinity. Well, no, maybe they just got 3 to work with. That's it.
Right.
So.
They just got a claw.
So I just kind of scoff at that. We get another question in the chat. It's from Luna Moonicorn, who asks, many people experience hauntings in the daytime or when the lights are on. Is there a reason people investigate mostly at night and in the dark?
Yes.
I think this is a great question.
This is a really good question. This is something that we kind of picked up on in our trial by error. Mm-hmm. And whenever we go to a location, we learn one more thing that we're doing wrong and why. And so somewhere along the road, we learned that as few electronical devices that can interfere with your equipment is the best. So all the lights go off. That way, your EMF detectors aren't picking up energy from any lights or any sort of electrical source that's going on. As far as day versus night, I don't know. I feel like that's just, we've investigated during the day.
It's believed that the spiritual veil is lifted somewhat at night, just like it's lifted whenever it's close to Halloween, right? I think it's the day after Halloween is like the most active time of year because that's when the veil is the thinnest. But it is believed that it's more likely that you're going to experience something at night. Mm-hmm. And just aesthetically, if we're shooting a TV show, it's scarier at nighttime. So
sure.
And there's that. But I think there is some science behind it where they think that veil is thinner or lifted a bit, if you will, at night, any night.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that perhaps it's the 3 to 4 a.m. window when it's probably the lightest, but that's a personal assumption. But I will say that nighttime investigating also, a lot of times you don't have the luxury of being in a secluded cabin in the woods or something like that. You're in very busy places with cars driving by, sirens and stuff. And of course, at night, generally people are sleeping, so things are quieter, and it's easier to quantify evidence without, well, is that someone cussing out the milkman or what's going on? Not that there's milkmen anymore, but anyway, you don't get the atmosphere.
If there were, we would cuss them out, right?
they got it coming. That's what I'm saying.
Can't just let them go by.
But I think that the nighttime, of course, is quieter and there's less distractions going on. So it does lend more credibility to evidence that it's not atmospheric or something happening in the area. So very cool.
Yeah, just from an investigation standpoint, there's just less noise contamination. Yeah. If you want to look at it just that way.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. There was a question here from Jaron Daniels, who's one of the hosts of Supernatural Station podcast. And he says, do you think the ratio of good versus malicious entities is lopsided, and why?
I would say that if it's lopsided to the good. But just like with anything, you're going to hear about the extremes more, right? So if there's one evil entity in a place, you're going to hear about that one place versus the 100 places that have just general, regular, everyday hauntings. Mm-hmm. So that's why you don't hear about like the house in Bridgewater, where a lot of the hauntings were scary, but they weren't. I don't think they were evil in intent. And who knows how many other houses on that same street are haunted or have had situations. But if there was something demonic going on, mm-hmm. you're going to hear about that. So it's probably lopsided. It's just we deal in extremes and everything.
Sure.
So you're going to hear more about the extreme situations than the stuff that's more, just, I don't want to say average, because a haunting is not average, but you know what I mean.
I don't know if average is the right word, but you get obviously the huge stories are the malign spirits, the evil ones. Those are the big stories. Your Amityville, your Conjuring, etc. But there are more, I think, positive ones that we get. And the most are actually in the middle. The most are just non-intelligent hauntings, just residual hauntings. You hear footsteps, you see something walk across the hallway, or some ghost being caught in a repetition that they were repeating from when they were alive. That's the bulk of it, in my opinion. I think most of it are those repetitive hauntings that are neither good or evil.
Yeah. Yeah. Good.
Yeah. I think you could look at it almost the same way you look at the news, right? The news isn't just reporting on all the people that had a normal day, which you could equate to your normal haunts. They're going to report on the people that are either having a really bad day or occasionally a really good day, right? So you're going to hear about the negative haunts a lot more than you're going to hear about your run-of-the-mill haunts.
Yeah, I would agree. Although, I think, of course, the terrifying ones more people are likely to talk about than, there's the grandma sitting in the chair again, rocking in the window. It's more benign or less sensational. No,
Hollywood isn't going to make a movie about the one ghost that moves a teacup 3 inches every 2 years. It's just not going to make the cut,
Like I said, I'm looking for the ghost of vacuums. That'd be great. I mean, if they're going to be here, sucks. They might as well be doing something. Yeah. There's another question in the chat, and this is from one of our mods. Rachel gets it right and says, do you think setting up a portable DVD player with a screen, making a movie, for example, an old classic like Casablanca or a Marx Brothers movie, might get a response? Do you think that may work as a trigger object, let's say?
I think that would have to be something specific to the spirit in the house, right? So
sure.
We did do a story where a guy set up this exact situation in Pittsburgh, and he played The Passion of the Christ on repeat over and over, and he claims that it would... What did he claim it was doing to the spirit?
It was like quieting down the demon. So he was trying to get a demon out of the house, and his way of doing that was... It started with just playing The Passion of the Christ on one TV every once in a while, and towards the end of the story, he seemed to have it not only playing in multiple rooms, but he had mirrors set up in these rooms so it would reflect The Passion of the Christ into every corner of the room.
Oh.
That's
the exact same way that I watch Passion of the Christ. So.
Somehow, his marriage didn't work out.
Yeah.
That guy's not mine. My marriage is fine.
The moral of the story is, if you're haunted, invoke the name of Mel Gibson and all things will be fixed.
Jim Caviezel, come save me.
You just have to find a DVD player. There's your big task.
Yeah. Well, that's probably true too. But I think that's an interesting take too, because I do too. I think that it's, if these spirits, like say, were alive during the 40s, 50s, certainly things from that era may inspire some more activity. But I agree. You're right. You can't know unless you experiment with things like that. When I originally read that question, I thought I thought Rachel was going with the whole picture in a picture in a picture at infinity, and then looking at the frames. You guys have heard about that, right?
I don't think so.
Okay, so
is that the mirror game there? Is that one of those paranormal games?
No, it's actually an old. I think it might have been developed by parapsychology, but basically what they would do is take a video camera, whatever make and model, point it at a TV, so it's constantly reflecting an image of this screen, and essentially making infinite layers. And apparently some people have gone frame by frame through these recordings and found these silhouettes, and sometimes looking like people that had died in a location. So it's a strange concept, and I don't know. It's
kind of a cool experiment.
Right. And it doesn't seem like it would be very hard to do. I think examining it, because you know, if you're recording 60 frames a second, you know, and you record for an hour, it's
a lot of frames to go through, my friend.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a lot of legwork, but there's been some interesting things captured, but those kind of things seem to kind of fall off to the wayside in replacements by things like the flashlight test and stuff like that. And you guys had mentioned that. I think those tests are really pretty incredible, but it has everything to do with timing. You know, like if it's just kind of popping on or off randomly, well, it could be, but it very much could be just atmospheric or whatever. But when those responses are happening on cue, you know, based on a question, I think it's incredibly powerful and compelling.
We've had it happen both ways. So we've had it specifically in the Bridgewater house. It always felt like it was responding to a question, but we've gone to other locations where we've done it and it's just turning on and off. And we obviously don't use that footage because we don't think that there's anything to it at that point other than it's just jumping consistently on and off. Right. So
sure.
It is very, I understand the skepticism behind it, but like you said, when it's being done and there's no rhythm or no pattern and it's at the command of the question, it's very compelling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is interesting. And to go back to the movies that she was talking about and playing these movies as kind of trigger objects, I'm a big fan of using trigger objects as long as you know who you're dealing with or what kind of ghost you're dealing with. Right. So if you're in a house where you know this little girl died in a fire and she had her doll, and you bring that doll and you try to use that doll, or one of the more common objects that's used is like a rubber ball or a soccer ball or something. And you sit in the middle of the floor, you do your scientific test, make sure that if you shift your chair back or if you walk next to it, the thing isn't just going to roll due to the motion in the room. And these objects at a lot of different locations, we've seen them at Waverly Hills, we've seen it at the Houghton Mansion. We're actually heading to a location on Sunday where a soccer ball is one of the trigger objects, and you'll sometimes see this thing roll, or, you know, you'll go back and check on it later. It'll be in a completely different room. And so these are different trigger objects, but as long as you know why it's there and why you're bringing a certain object, and, you know, then I think you could have more success with it for sure.
I always find the ones, like some of the trigger objects I think are just in poor taste. Like, you know, let's hang a noose up on a rafter because this is where the person hung himself. It's like, no, that's not a good idea.
Yeah, let's not do that.
Yeah, I think at the Villisca axe murder house that there was on the Ghost Adventures episode, Zach Baggins literally laid down and had like the axe just sitting there. He's like, chop my head off now, demon. I would not go that approach.
No, yeah, jeez. All right,
because the best case scenario is also the worst case scenario.
It worked, and we have to find a new host. Aaron's time to shine.
It's Aaron's adventures after that. Gentlemen, we got about a minute left. Can you take a minute and let people know how to stay in touch with you and what you're doing?
Yeah, so hometownghoststories.com. You can find the podcast everywhere, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We're on YouTube as well, so you can search the videos. We do put a lot of work into the video portion, so you know, if people can do that, then connect with us. But yeah, we're
you can join us live on Tuesdays at 9 p.m. You can be part of our chat as well. Don't stop listening to Paranormal Portal.
Yeah,
because this is an amazing show as well. But our nights don't overlap. You can come join us Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. You can join our Discord as well, and our Patreon has some exclusive stuff on it as well.
Well, fantastic, guys. It's been an absolute blast having you here. Thank you so much for coming on and being a part of the journey. I really appreciate your time and your companionship, keeping me company here.
Dude, you're a legend. This has been great. It's fun to just sit around and just talk about ghosts for a long time, man. It's awesome.
Anytime, we'll come back as long as your chat doesn't ban us.
No, they love you guys. I mean, they were coming up with tons of questions for you, so I guess you've earned their seal of approval as well. But yeah, we'll keep doing crossover shows and stay in each other's sphere of activity, and by God, we're going to do some amazing things in the future. I can tell.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Let's link up. Let's do an investigation.
I like that idea. I really do. I'm very sincere about that. So I hope you guys are as well, because that would be a blast.
Absolutely.
Plus, I think you have more toys than I have.
Maybe.
This is going to wrap up our journey here on the Paranormal Portal tonight. Hope you guys had a good time. Obviously, this is a great night. 3 guests, wonderful guests. Amazing discussion. So remember to let people know about the Paranormal Portal. Get out! Guys, thank you so much for joining us here on tonight's show. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please feel free to follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Paranormal Portal Radio, as well as finding us on Twitter. We're on Twitter at Paranormal Portal, PORTL, and we'd love to have you stop by our YouTube page and subscribe and check out our shows there. We got hundreds of shows, journeys into the Paranormal Portal, so I hope you'll check it out, guys. We're over there at youtube.com/Paranormal Portal, so hope to see you guys soon. We'll be back, of course, for more podcasts in the coming days. So we love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other. Help each other out. Find the magic in every day. And remember to laugh as much as you can.